Hello, my name is Graeme Wyman, and I'm the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. Today, I'm going to be giving a chat on the acoustic guitar. We'll be going over the basics of the acoustic guitar, how to tune the guitar, some basic chords, and then finally some basic strum patterns. Let's get started. So the acoustic is essentially made up of three parts. You have the body, the neck, and then finally the headstock, which includes the tuning pegs. So when I'm normally giving a lesson up at GF Strong, we're going to start with the most important thing, how to tune the instrument. So there's 6 strings on the acoustic guitar, and they go down as E, A, D, G, B, and E. So one more time, that is E, A, D, G, B, and then finally E again. So an easy way to kind of remember how, or an anagram for remembering the strings that I was taught when I started playing, thank you John Stiver for that, was elephants and dogs get big ears. So now let's start tuning the guitar. Now, you can either use a tuner. I'm using a super light tuner that I've had for years, a Snarky. But also this guitar has a built-in tuner as well. So you won't be able to see it, but I'll go through the process. So, turn that on. So I am in tune right now, but I'll just detune it and retune it. So we'll just start with the first E string. So you can hear that it went out of tune. Now, when you would hit the guitar string, you want it so that it comes back to E. So I'm going to tune the peg up because I'm flat right now. So I've hit the tuning peg, and on my tuner, it actually reads as, oh, a little bit flat still. So, there we go. So now we're back in tune. Now, if you were sharp, you would tune the tuning peg the opposite direction. The main thing is that you just want the guitar to read out as E, A, D, G, B, and then finally E. And a nice way to make sure that your guitar is in tune is to try a few chords out. So I'm going to be showing you one of our chords that we'll be learning, but I'm just going to play that again. All right, so there we go. I'll check my other strings to make sure they're in tune as well, just in case, because I heard a little bit of a pitch issue. Yeah, A is fine, D is good, G is good, B is good, and finally E is good. I guess I was, yeah, I'm a little sharp on the D again. There we go. So now, why don't we start looking at some basic chords? So today, we're just going to go over a few. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And what we'll want to look at first is here's a chord chart. And now this and all the other resources that I will be using today will be up on the Connect Together website. So they should be right under the link that you clicked to view this video. Now, the first chord that I think we should start off with is why not the first one that I showed, which was E. So to place your fingers, and that is the second, it's the first chord on the left, on the bottom, or in the middle. So as you can see, from the left-hand side would be the low E string, and the right side of the chord would be the high E string. So now let's place our first fingers, and there's finger positions there as well. So if we're looking at the finger positions with our hands, our index finger is 1, our middle finger is 2, and finally our pardon me, our ring finger is number 3. Now, I will strum the first chord, but here. So if I put those down directly, 1 on the, if we count that down 2, it's the 4th string down, so that would be our G string. So skip E, skip A, skip D, and place it on E, or sorry, G, my apologies. Now, the next finger that I'm going to place is my 3rd finger, which is on the D string. So again, I'll skip the A, skip the E, and place it on the D string. And last but not least, we're going to place our 2nd finger on the A string. So again, our 1st finger is on the G, our 3rd finger is on the D, and our 2nd finger is on the A string. Now, you'll also see on certain chords either what looks like an empty circle or an X. Now, if there's a circle there, that means that you can play the string and that's totally fine for the chord. Now, when there's an X, that means that you should not play that string. So just to give an example, if you look at the chord right next to the E chord, the D chord, you have 2 X's on the E string and the A string. And then there's a circle on the D string. So that would mean you do not want to play the E string or the A string. But let's get back to the E chord. So now, when we play it, so now let's play the E chord. We're going to want to have, so now I've shared my screen, and as you can see, there are 9 chords right now. Let's start with a very simple one that I played earlier called the E string, or sorry, the E chord. So for the E chord, that's the one that's in the middle on the left-hand side. So as you can see, there's numberings on the bottom. Now what those numbers correlate to is what fingers should play on what string. So just to let you know, our index finger is the 1, is number 1. Our middle finger is 2. Our ring finger is 3. And our pinky would be 4. So if you look, we're going to count down 4 strings. So on the left-hand side, that would be our low E string. And on the right-hand side would be our high E string. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to that number 1 on the 1st fret. So the 1st fret on the G string. Next, you're going to put your 2nd finger, or sorry, rather your 3rd finger on the D string. So again, we will skip the E string, skip the A string, and place our index or our ring finger or our 3rd finger on the D string. Now finally, we will put our 2nd finger on the A string. And now we are ready to strum the chord. There we go, nice sound and easy. So you will also see that there are little circles or X's underneath the letter of the chord. Now what that correlates to is if there's a circle, that means that you should play that string. If there's an X, like you see on the chord directly next to the E, which is a D chord, it has 2 X's on the E string and the A string. That means that you do not want to play those notes. But let's just try that E one more time. So now, since I just mentioned it, why don't we try the D chord? So for the D chord, we're going to want to put our index finger on the G string. So we're going to count down 4 strings, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that G string, we're going to put our 1st finger on the 2nd fret there. So you can see we're now on the 2nd fret, not the 1st. Then next, we're going to put our second finger on the high E string, so the last string. And then finally, we will be putting our third finger on the 3rd fret B string. So again, that's 2nd fret, 1st finger on the G string, 2nd fret, 2nd finger on the E string, and finally the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret on the B string. So now let's try strumming that. And now again, we're not going to hit the E string or the A string. We're going to play the D, open D, and then the next 3 notes underneath. So here we go. There we go. And why don't we try that one more time? There we go. Perfect. Now, why don't we try the A chord, which is for some people, one of the easiest chords to play. So again, and I just actually want to reiterate, again, we are the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. So sometimes if you can't necessarily play a chord, I'll give an example on the D string again. For me physically, just given my arthritis, it's actually more difficult to play the way that D chord's written by having my 2nd finger underneath. The way that's most comfortable for me is to actually use my 1st finger on the high E string, my 3rd finger in the same place, and then use my 2nd finger on the G string. So I'm essentially inversing the 1 finger and the 2 finger on the G and E strings respectively. So just to show you, this is how I play the chord. And again, this is all about having fun and being comfortable with what you're playing. You don't want it to hurt. I mean, you will have a little bit of a learning curve if you're starting out, as your fingers will build what are called calluses. So that does take a little bit of time, but more or less, it's about how your fingers are positioned, and that's what you do not want to hurt. But now let's go back to the A string. And so for the A string, it has us play on if we count down again, that's 1 string, 2 string. Our 1st finger would go on the G string on the 2nd fret. Now, our 2nd finger would go on the D string, 2nd fret again, and then finally, our 3rd finger would go on the B string, 2nd fret. So that's our A chord. Now, again, something that I've seen lots of other guitar players doing, give an example and a shout out to David Gilmour, one of my personal favorites, but he actually plays his A by placing his finger directly across those 3 strings. And he kind of omits the high E string, so I'll just try that. And that, for me, is more comfortable and it's just more natural. So why don't we try the C chord next? So the C chord, again, we're going to go on the 1st fret, and if we count down, that's going to be all the way down to the B string. Then, so right there, B string, 1st fret. Now the next part is 2nd fret, 3rd string, which would be the D string. And then finally, we're going to put our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, A string. Now again, because there's an X on the high E, or the low E rather, we are going to not play that note. So if we're playing the C chord, it would be, there we go. Now let's just try that one more time. Perfect. All right, now, why don't we jump to the G chord? So this chord in particular, physically, because I actually can only use 3 fingers to play my instrument, I will be omitting the 3rd finger or the 3rd fret B string note. So the way that I would play is the same at the beginning, which would be place your 2nd finger on the low E string, your first finger on the second fret A string. We're going to skip the D and the G notes. And myself personally, if you can do this, fantastic. You put your third finger on the B string, third fret. But since I physically can't do it, I'm going to place it on the high E string, third fret. And this voicing is actually correct as well, because in the G chord, a B natural is actually one of the notes, and it's actually being played by my first finger as well. So I'll try playing that. There we go. One more time. Alrighty. Now, for today, because this is the intro to acoustic guitar, we're just going to stick with those chords for now. I think you're more than welcome to try those other ones out, but for now, I just want to keep it to those 5 chords, because that's a lot to start off with in practice, and just to really hammer down. So, now that we know some of these chords, why don't we go to strum patterns? So I'm going to share, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to look for another one of my screens. Now, let me see here. Strum patterns. So, I'm going to pick a chord for us. What's going on there? There we go. All right. So, and again, this document will be underneath the link you clicked to watch this video. Now, our first strum pattern number 1, is just 8 notes. Now, in music, we have, and it's probably the most difficult concept to grasp compared to chords, but it's rhythm. Now, what we're going to do is, and another important thing whenever you're practicing, and this will actually come up in a video that VAMS will be doing tomorrow at 10 a.m., May 19th, and that is on the importance of practice. But this still applies here when we're playing the acoustic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get what's called a metronome. Now, the metronome that I have here is a free app. It's called Pro Metronome, and essentially, I'm just going to set this to a low level, a lower tempo, and I'm going to play the first pattern. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to clap it first. Now, I won't do this for every other strum pattern as we go through them, but I think it's beneficial for everyone, to, when you're starting out, to play to a metronome and to clap the strum patterns. So, let us go. And you always want to go slower than faster. When I was in college, my teachers, it was almost like an unwritten rule, but they would always love to hear something slower and correct than fast and wrong. So we're going to take something nice and slow, which is 65 beats per minute. So I'm going to play the metronome, and then I'm going to clap that first strum pattern. So I'm going to count it out loud once before I start in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right. So I'm going to leave that metronome on, but I'm going to pick a chord, and let's choose something easy. Why don't we start off with our A chord? So again, you can either somewhat bar it. The strings that you're going to want to play are on the second fret, the D string, the G string, and the B string. So again, I'm just going to lay my hand flat because that's more comfortable for me. But here we go. I'm going to count off 1 measure before I come in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. So another great practicing technique, just stop this for a sec. Another great practicing technique would to take all those chords that we learned previously and play that strum pattern again. So whether it's the G chord, whether it's the D chord, whether it's the E chord, I would take all of those chords that we learned and I would play them to that strum pattern. And again, if you don't play with a metronome, it's not the end of the world. It's just more beneficial because it definitely keeps you in time. You can practice it without a metronome, but I always try to encourage my students and clients to practice with a metronome. All right, so why don't we move to strum pattern 2? All right, so strum pattern 2, again, I'm going to leave it at 65. Now, once you're comfortable, one thing I should mention is once you're comfortable with the strum pattern at 65, you can take it faster. You know, I can put it up to 80, then 90, then 120, as high as you want to go. But the main thing is to start off slow and incrementally get faster. All right, so I'm going to play the metronome at 65 beats per minute again, and I'm going to clap that strum pattern. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 3, and 4. All right. I know earlier I did mention that I wasn't going to clap, but I guess I might do it for everyone. Let's see. So now I'm going to pick another chord, and I'm going to play strum pattern number 2. All right, here we go. 2 and 3. All right, I guess what chord are we going to choose this time? Why don't we choose the C chord? All right, 1, and again, the C chord is 3rd finger, 3rd fret on the A string, 2nd finger, 2nd fret on the D string, and finally, 1st finger, 1st fret on the B string. All right, here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 There we go. So again, start practicing that slow, play it through all the chords, and then you can start getting faster after you're comfortable playing all the chords at a lower tempo. So next, we're gonna move to strum pattern number 3. Now, I guess I might as well clap with everyone for this. Here we go. So I'm gonna start the metronome, and we're just gonna clap it first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So there we go. Now I'm going to pick another chord. Why don't we try the D chord today? So I'm going to count 1 measure in, then I'll start playing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Oh, and again, I guess I should mention, just to go over the chord again before, is the way that is written in the chord sheet's a little different, but the way that I'm going to play it, because it's most comfortable for me, is 2nd fret, high E string, then 2nd finger will be on the G string, 2nd fret, and finally my 3rd finger is going to be on the B string, 3rd fret. All right, so here we go. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 4. So there we go. Now, strum pattern number 4. Now this one's a little tricky because what you have here is a tie note in between the and of 2 and the beginning of 3. So this one, again, is very important to try clapping first because it might slip some people up if they just jump right into it. So I'm going to play my metronome and I'm going to count through. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4. we go. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is pick another chord. Why don't we try, let's think here. Why don't we, we've done the D. I'm just gonna check my chords again. And we've done the G, we've done the A, oh no, we've done the A, we've done the C, we've done the, we haven't done the G chord. Why don't we try the G chord? So now for strum pattern 5, I'm going to start playing that. I'm going to count, or 4 rather. I'm going to count and then play it. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. There we go. So that would be strum pattern number 4 with the G chord. And again, the G is the second finger on the low E string, first finger on the B string, 2nd fret, and finally the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, E high E string. All right, so now we're going to try strum pattern number 5. Then we'll start with clapping it for 4 measures first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So we'll stop that, and now what I'm going to do next is, I guess I'll pick, I think our final chord is E. So again, for the E chord, you have the 2nd finger on the A string, the 3rd finger on the D string, both on the 2nd fret, and then finally, your 1st finger will be on the 1st fret G string. All right, here we go. 2 and 3 and 4 and there we go. Now, last but not least is strum pattern number 6. So again, just like with every other one, we're going to clap through that first, and then we'll pick a chord. We'll have to double up on this one though, because we've gone through all of our chords with the strum patterns. So again, the metronome's at 65, and here we go. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4. There we go. So again, why don't we start with the A chord. It's our easiest one that I personally feel to play, and yeah, just again, the main notes that we're going to play here are all on the 2nd fret, the D string, the G string, and the B string. So there we go. We're going to play the metronome. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 There we go. So just like with the arrows, down for down and up for up. All right, perfect. So I'll reiterate again, with any of these strum patterns, what we want to do is we want to try playing them with one chord, but first clapping, unless you're comfortable enough with just going right into it, which is totally fine, but it always helps for beginners to start clapping before they just start implementing it with chords. And so what I would do for each strum pattern would be try every chord that we learned, and then eventually at a low tempo but eventually we get at a faster rate. All right, so the last thing that I am going to share with you all today will be a practice sheet. And again, this will be, just like the other two forms that you will see, is right underneath the link that you clicked for this Connect Together event. All right. So this practice sheet, and it's always good to see with practice sheets how far you're coming. This will be reiterated in tomorrow's talk, but I just want to go over it now with you, just in case, because it's always good to see how far you're coming along with your progression in your musical journey. So pretty simple. On this left-hand side, it has a date, what you practice, and how long you practice for. And hopefully, eventually, what you would like to see is, say, if you're just doing 15 minutes right now as a practice, then, once you start, learning more, you might start with 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. And again, it's something you always want to take pride in how you're moving forward with your instrument as well. And it's just nice to visually see where you're at. All right. Well, again, my name is Graeme Wyman, and I'm the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. And this has been an introduction to the acoustic guitar. Take care and stay safe.